you do if I told you that not only do you have to deal with your own stresses and traumas and poor relationships, but you also have to deal with your mothers and your fathers and your grandparents and your great-grandparents? That would be incredibly overwhelming. But it turns out we kind of do. We all do. Not only is it possible for you to inherit your mother's eyes and your father's nose, but also you can inherit your grandmother's extremely deep-seated anxiety about sex because she was sexually abused as an adolescent, or your grandfather's predisposition to be depressed because he was neglected as a child. I don't have time to deal with all of that, but it turns out we have to because of epigenetics. Epigenetics is the study of changes in organisms caused by modification to the way that a gene expresses itself. So what I mean by that is that inside the nucleus of each of the cells in our body, there is our DNA saying, you are Kendra, and this is what you look like, and this is who you are. But attached to the DNA is all of this extra, like, molecular junk that tells the cell how to express the DNA. So for example, there's DNA in one cell and there's some extra stuff saying you're a liver cell. So even though this cell is I'm part of Kendra, it is specifically going to express itself as part of my liver. Or another cell says you are an eye cell, and so it will say I'm going to express myself as part of Kendra's eye. Originally, scientists believed that epigenetic changes could only occur in utero during actual fetal development. However, more recently they have discovered that there can be epigenetic changes during adulthood, and these can come about due to the experiences that we are exposed to. They first started to look at things like how a change in diet or exposure to chemicals could actually result in epigenetic changes. Then they started to think, if these things can cause changes to our epigenetics, then what about things like trauma, excessive stress, abuse, neglect, violence? And what they were able to find is that these traumatic experiences actually can cause changes on your DNA. Now don't worry, it is not all bad news, because really positive experiences and wonderful things that happen in our lives can cause these changes as well. The point is, regardless of what your experiences are, positive or negative, they will leave a scarring on your DNA that is then passed on from generation to generation. Now, the reason I'm telling you all of this is because this week in school, we were studying family counseling, which was so much fun. One of the most important things that we learned was that in order to really understand an individual, you need to understand the family as a whole. Not only because we want to have a good idea of the lessons that they learned in terms of the environment that they grew up in and the way that they were nurtured, but also the things that were inherited from their ancestors and perhaps cause certain behavioral patterns or traits to arise. So the best way to figure out how much your family affects you is to climb right into your own family tree and decode that. So that's what we were asked to do this week. We each were asked to create a genogram, which is a family tree on steroids, really. I was gonna bring mine along to show you because I'm really proud of it. It's really beautiful. But I also realized that it could offend a good number of people in my family, which is why I found this example online. So as you can see, you have the basic structure of the family tree, and then you add in all of these different lines and connections between people to express the type of relationship that those people had. So I was forced to look at my family in a completely different way, not just who married who and how many children they had, but who is loved by whom? How is that love shown? Is there violence? Who are the victims of that violence? Are there close relationships, distant relationships, abuse, trauma, addictions, cancer, disease, divorce, death, affairs? It was exhausting. But ultimately, it was an extremely amazing and rewarding experience because it gave me all this insight into some of these behaviors that I have or my family members have that I never really fully understood. We're all a little bit crazy, and sometimes I don't even know why I'm crazy. I do these things, I'm like, where did that come from? And now I am inclined to blame my great-grandmother. So I highly recommend making your own genogram. You might have to ask a parent or a grandparent for some help to get a bit more information, but it can be a really rewarding and ultimately healing experience. Because one of the most amazing things about epigenetics that my professor told us is that not only is there potential for all of this extra molecular junk to attach itself onto our DNA, we also have the ability to help remove it and release it through counseling and healing and understanding. That is your little lesson with a touch of insight for today. Next week, we're starting addictions counseling, and I actually have to give up something that I'm addicted to. So stay tuned for my grumpy withdrawal video next week.